That also has its limitations, because if it's rainy weather or if there's not a lot of sun, then they can't fly. So that's why you often also see, especially still early in the morning in Central Africa and in lots of places, you see large congregations of storks or other larger migratory birds, because they are waiting for the ground to heat up the air and the thermals to be created so they can fly on. But that's an energy saving way, but again it has a negative side. They can't travel as fast and as far per day as some of the other optimal way. The other thing is, and that again mostly relates to the bigger birds, is that when speaking about these thermals you typically only get over land. Over sea you don't get any thermals, because the sea doesn't heat up the same way that land masses do. So what you see is for a lot of the bigger birds, it's what is called migration corridors. Let me see if I can get my mouse working again. Yeah. You can imagine this is just a close-up of the boundary between Europe and Africa. It also shows you actually how big Africa is, because you see here just a couple of the northern countries of Africa, whereas almost the whole of Europe is fitting in that same size. But you can imagine all these birds coming out of Africa, or in the other season they're coming back from the north side. But there's quite a bit of water bodies here, and that would be difficult for birds, especially the bigger birds, to fly over. So what happens is that they congregate, and it's almost like a funnel effect. They fly over here through the Sinai, over Israel, Lebanon. Then they spread out, and I think it's the Black Sea, might be the Caspian, but I think it's the Black Sea. And then again here, they don't fly straight over, they split up there, and then they fan out again. And the same happens near the Strait of Gibraltar. The birds that take the more western route, they congregate here in these areas, go through actually quite a narrow funnel, and then spread out again over the Iberian subcontinent and further into France and Northern Europe. That means actually if you are a bird watcher and you want to watch migrating birds, this is a very good area to be in, because all the birds that come from Africa take the eastern route, and the birds that migrate from the Siberian steppes and tundras, they come past here. Sometimes on one day, I've read, over Israel you can see 35 different species of raptor actually flying over. That must be a great sight to behold, and not one or two, but hundreds or thousands of them. So that's another way that birds have adapted. They actually avoid big ocean or sea crossings and follow the land masses. But now the question you can ask is, yeah, but how does that bird know how it has to fly over Israel, or through that avoid the Mediterranean Sea or whatever? Well, birds are very good at navigating, and depending on where you read it, you get all kinds of different theories, and I think the bottom line is that we haven't still exactly figured out how they do it. There are some mechanisms that we know about, but all the exact details are still, I wouldn't say a mystery, but definitely also not completely found out. One thing that I think most people would be familiar with is that birds can navigate from the sun, which is definitely one of the ways that they do it. And how do you then again determine that bird navigates from the sun? What was found out is that if you take birds that are migratory and you have them in a cage, then at the time that they are supposed to start migrating, they get very restless, because it's somewhere inherited in their system that they have to start migrating, but they can't go anywhere. The Germans, as always, have a very nice word for that. It's called Zugunruhe. It's just a very nice sound to it. It basically means migration unrest, but it just sounds very nice in German, like a lot of words. Whereas on days that it's clouded and the birds can't see the sun, then they still get restless, but they're restless in all kinds of directions, not in the direction that they normally would migrate in. So that's a way of that we found out, that actually they use the sun as a compass almost. The same goes with the stars. Some birds fly at night and they are able to navigate on the stars, and those things can be determined in the same way. On a cloudy night it's very difficult for those birds to navigate. Oh, I didn't do that. I think my mouse is up. Navigation. Okay. So and this is an inherited an inherited skill that birds have. This navigation skill. Again, how do you know it's navigated? It's not a learned skill. For instance, if you think about cuckoos, cuckoos are migratory. A lot of them, most of them. They migrate from, like some of that we have in southern Africa, they migrate to Central Africa. But cuckoos, and that's what they're known for, they don't raise their own chicks. The chicks are raised by other bird species, in that sense they're nest parasites. But the young chicks, even though they've never seen the parent birds, they still know that they have to migrate, and they will still migrate and they will still make it there. So that shows you that at least part of that skill is inherited. Further studies have shown that the basic skill is inherited, but as birds migrate several times, on top of their, let's say, innate ability to know the general direction they have to go to and how far they have to fly, they will learn certain landmarks, or so they can fine-tune their routes. It's a bit about they're born with a compass in their head, but then as time goes on, they also get a map. So they can, with that compass, they can actually fine-tune their route on the map and find the most efficient route. So it's a bit nature, it's a bit nurture. Now I just quickly lost my train of thought. The navigation. When I talk about the map that birds develop, we don't know exactly how they have a map in their head, but there are strong suspicions that it has to do with some special structure in the bird's brain, which also contains some trace metal components, and that actually is susceptible to the magnetic field of the Earth, so that the birds can actually sense the strength and the direction of the magnetic field, and that in that way they actually identify certain points along their way based on their magnetic thing. In a way, maybe a bit like that what we would use a GPS technology, based on information that comes in from different sides. You actually determine your position and you store it in your mind somewhere. Another indication that birds still learn to migrate is that if you find birds that have blown off course, which sometimes happens, which is good if you're a birder or a twitcher like myself, because it's always nice to see a bird that actually doesn't belong in your area. It's often young birds that were on their first migration, so they just had the little compass, but they didn't have a real map. So that means that is fine as long as you can keep going north. But if there's a strong storm or something like that that blows you off course, you don't have a map, you will still keep going north and you end up in the wrong place. So that happens mostly to younger birds. Older birds that typically doesn't happen to, because they have this additional, whether it's either through the magnetic field or other visual clues maybe, they know that, hey, I'm in the wrong place, and then they can correct it and still end up in the right place. So, but that's actually a fascinating thing, because you always talk about bird brains, and sometimes not in a positive sense. You've got a bird brain, that's not very good, but they're quite fascinating, and actually, how many people get lost when they're 10 meters away from home. Imagine something with a little bird brain being able to navigate all across the world, basically. So it was a short introduction into some things around migration, and migration is a fascinating phenomenon. I think if you think these little birds, these little creatures, and how far they go. If you've ever traveled even in an aeroplane, you're sitting and you travel across the length of Africa from Europe or from the US or wherever you travel from, it's like a 10-hour flight, and it's like in a big Boeing you go 1,000 kilometers per hour, and you meet this little bird, it just does it twice a year without any problems. It's just fascinating. Shows you how far developed and how fine